Welcome back to another episode of Northwoods Whitetails Podcast. I'm your host, Joey Davis, joined by Isaac Young. On today's podcast, we are down to Huntstock, and you're going to hear Travis Williams, Brent Dragon, and guest Garrett Henderson for a quick 30-minute segment, and then we're going to dive right into another one with Connor Schlong, Nate Sanvil, and Johnny Hood. We're going to dive right in. Here we go.
We're here at Huntstock today, sitting down with Garrett Henderson.
Yes, sir.
Garrett, you've shot some good bucks, huh?
Yeah, I've been fortunate enough to take a few.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Well, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself, and then maybe we'll dive into one of those big bucks you've killed.
Yeah, okay. Well, my name's Garrett Henderson. I currently live in St. Johnsbury, Vermont. Just getting ready to move to another place in Sheffield, so that'll be good. I am a self-employed contractor, building contractor. And just, the last 4 or 5 years, I've really had some time to deer hunt, and that's what it takes, right? I mean,
absolutely.
We all need time to do it. So I've been fortunate enough to have the time to do it and have some good buddies to do it with.
Two very important pieces of the puzzle right there.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yep.
So yeah, we're friends on Facebook, and
Yep.
I think this is actually the first time we physically met. But
Yes.
I definitely have seen some of the big ones. You shot up. What was it? This year you shot that big one?
Yeah, it was this year in New Hampshire, muzzleloader, November 7.
Well, let's hear about that one.
Okay. November 7, I shot the buck just after 7 a.m. Luke picked me up at the house. It was before daylight. We had a 45-minute hour ride to where we were going. I remember, he picked me up probably 5:30. It was 65 degrees, warm. And I remember the night before I had the conversation with my father on the phone. He says, boy, man, it's been hot. I don't know if I'm going to hunt. I said, Dad, you got to. I said, it's time. It's time I don't care if it's 80 degrees. You just never know. We got to go. So me and Luke head over, get to where we're going. It was just cracking daylight. We had a little over about a mile walk in, I guess. And we get to the power line. Of course, like I told you before, it was Luke's spot. Luke had 3 years of pictures of this buck. So we get to the power line. I asked Luke, I said, okay, which way do you want to go? We hemmed and hawed for a minute. He says, well, I'll go south. I said, all right, I'll go north. So before we parted ways, I told him, I said, we can just sit on the power line and watch some of these deer crossings. I said, when you get sick of standing around, I said, come grab me. I said, we can do our normal loop around the mountain, whatever you want to do. I said, all right. So we parted. I maybe walked a quarter mile up the power line, stood on a high spot. I could see way further than I could ever shoot with even a rifle, So the first hour of daylight, I watched birds fly back and forth across the power line, watched sunrise. It was hot already. I said, man, this isn't ideal weather, and I was second guessing myself. So what are we doing? It's hot. So just before 7 o'clock, I looked down at my watch and I said, boy, I wonder when Luke will be up through. So I kind of started paying attention behind me. You know how roads are on power lines, they wind and they dip.
Yeah.
So I turned around, looked over my shoulder a few times, pretty quick, and I could see his bright orange ball cap coming up the right way, but he was way down. And I said, well, he's on his way up. He's sick. He's coming to get me. So maybe 5 minutes goes by, and I look again, and Luke's maybe 100 yards behind me coming up through. And the last time I looked at him, I turned back around and looked north on the power line, and I watched the deer out on the power line. And he was 5.5 poles north of me.
Oh, wow.
So it was, if I had to guess, 700. Around 700 yards.
Yeah, because what are those, Brent? Do you know?
I don't know. It's got to be 100, 125 yards
I think
apiece.
there's like a formula.
Yeah.
There's a rhyme to it. It's not like they're just random. I want to say they're 100 or 150 yards apart.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he he hops out on the power line. I turn around and I look at Luke and I give him the stop sign because I'm watching this buck and he's out and he's got his head down on the power line, sniffing around. And I said, boy, so now in my head, I said, what am I going to do? I said, this deer is huge. And I thought to myself, I got to get up there. I got to go. So the deer got into a water bar and I hit the tree line and I sprinted for 5 poles, and I mean sprint. And the wind was blowing hard at me. I weren't worried about the buck smelling me. I was just worried about the buck seeing me. And so I got tree line, and I got up there, and I'm counting poles as I'm flying by them. And I get to the 5th pole, and I said, all right, take a breather.
That was smart of you, though, to have the presence of mind to see a buck of that caliber and then count the poles and know. Yeah. Because otherwise, you're like, it's so hard to judge distance,
especially 700 yards.
Right. It's a long way.
That's a post.
It might not have been quite 7, but it was a long way, And so I get to the 5th pole, and I'm like, all right, you got to take a breather. If you got to make a shot here, of course, it's muzzleloader, right? You got one. So I try to get myself calmed down. I said, all right, this deer's still, and where I had stopped, the power line started uphill, and fairly steep. And there was a big spruce tree that had kind of grown out into the power line a little bit. There was a couple of big boulders and a couple of smaller boulders. And I said, all right, if I can get over to one of those smaller boulders, I'll have something to rest on. And if the deer's still on this bank here, we'll be good. So I start creeping around the spruce tree, and I get in behind the first big boulder. And I'm just going to walk from out behind it. And I look up the bank, and here's the buck, 70 yards, standing in a water bar. And this is what I got, is his head. Set up. So I fall back into the rock, and I take the safety off of the woodman. And I said, boy, this ain't much of a shot. I said, that's what I got, right? And you got a million things going through your head. What do I do? The buck takes one bound. He's only 10 feet from the tree line. One bound, he's gone out of my life forever, So I'm thinking in my head, I said, well, I can wait and see what happens. And then the other half of me says, well, you know what? I said, I know I can hit a softball at 70 yards. And that's what we're going to do because I got your chance. I got my chance, and I'm going to make the most of it, right?
Yeah, got to try.
So I leaned back into the stone, and I'm just talking to myself in my head. I said, buddy, this is the only shot you're going to get, and you better squeeze it good. And I mean squeeze it and squeeze it. And I just kept telling myself that in the head. Squeeze it. Squeeze it. Gun breaks. Smack. And I look up there. There's nothing. Of course, and I didn't know it at the time, but Luke had walked up to the telephone pole where I was standing and was watching all this unfold.
I was just gonna ask you that because I'm thinking, wait a minute, Luke's 100 yards from you when you see him. Right. You take off running. Did he see the buck?
He didn't. When I turned around and told him to put the brakes on, I gave him this sign.
Oh,
so
gotcha.
I think he had a pretty good idea that what was going on. You know. So
now, could he see the buck when you were shooting it?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, he could.
So he watched me run up the tree line, and he was watching the buck make his way down, and he's like in his head screaming, "Garrett, stop! The buck's coming! Garrett, stop! The buck is!" And we're just on a crash course for each other, and he's just sitting back, he's like, oh man, it's either gonna happen or it's not. Not much he could do, right? So yeah, from where he was, he watched the muzzleloader go off and the deer go down in the same motion, and that was it.
He knew the deer had dropped before you did then.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He saw
he
it.
He
watched the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How cool is that?
So I get up to the buck, and I'm looking him over, and I had to go to the tree line because I was dry heaving, and I think it was a combination of sprinting a quarter mile and
I was going to ask about that.
And excitement, and Luke gets up there. He says, "Hey, that's a nice one." I said, "Yeah, I guess he's a nice one," and it didn't even seem real. I've hunted for deer hunting since I was 9 years old. I'm going to be 44, and I'd never seen anything like that. Mm-hmm. It was incredible feeling. It was actually I was almost sick to my stomach the entire day.
Yeah.
Excited but nauseous. And it was just.
That's why we do it, though.
Oh yes.
I was just going to say that for someone like myself who's never shot a buck like that, I don't know if I've ever seen one like that. While hunting, and those hunts, this account that you just gave, and the animal or what, that's what the dreams are made of. When you slip those lacrosse boots on in the morning and you're headed, you shut that truck door. Those are the visions. I'm thinking of Garrett's Bach,
Right.
And it's they're out there, and you have an opportunity to bump into one, and that's what keeps us going.
Yeah, and I just I want to reiterate, there's not many guys like Luke that would have even invited anybody to share something like that.
And Luke's last name?
Yeah, Luke Keithan.
Yeah.
Luke Keithan. He's a hell of a good guy. I got a handful of guys that I hunt with, but he's about the only one I share anything with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Well, you need that too, because for me, and I'm sure you guys will relate, part of hunting is the camaraderie. It's that connection with other hunters, family.
Right.
For me, it's a tradition, like going to hunting camp. And,
yes.
And without other people to enjoy it and share it with, it's just not, it's not as fun.
You're right.
So having your buddy there.
Yep.
And having an animal like that,
having somebody there to share it with,
that's what it's all about.
Made it that much sweeter.
Yeah, especially someone that's been watching this deer for 3 years.
Right.
That's
right.
It had to be exciting for him also.
It was a true testament to his character, because I know some guys that I hunted with that probably would have never talked to me again.
Yeah.
Over something like that.
Yeah.
What
did he score?
He grossed 162 and 7/8 and netted 156.
Wow.
Yeah.
How was the drag?
The drag wasn't bad. Again, I had a good buddy that made the trek back to the truck to get the jet sled. So it wasn't bad at all.
Yeah.
It might have taken an hour.
What do you weigh?
182. Emptied right out. Yep. Yep. Yeah. So. And to see the look on my boy's face when I pulled in the driveway with that was what it's all about, right there.
Oh yeah, I've seen those pictures with your son.
Yeah, he's gonna be a hunter.
There's no question.
He's got the bug already. He killed 4 toms this spring, turkey hunting, and he's hooked.
That's awesome.
That's all he wants to talk about. When I go put him in bed at night, it's YouTube. He's watching, either Northwoods Whitetail or the Just Hunt Club. He's watching all these guys, and I really would have liked to bring him down today. That him and his mother were busy, but sometime I'll get him down here.
Yeah, my wife's down here. I have a 3.5-year-old.
Yep.
And so, just something to keep in mind for next year. Great Wolf Lodge is just a couple clicks.
Nice.
So they're at Great Wolf Lodge. Yep. Adelina, my daughter, and my wife are having a blast, and I'm here doing Huntstock.
So we're in the middle of a move. So Crystal was gracious enough to be standing baseboard trim while I'm down here playing. So she's a keeper for sure.
I thank my wife in every single one of my videos when I'm lucky enough to get a deer. It's without our wives or our significant others supporting us and letting us do the thing that we are so passionate about.
Right.
Then.
Right.
And my wife truly is excited every time I come through the door
Yep.
with either a story or a buck, whatever it be.
Yeah.
And she's there to pick me up when I'm down because, if you're a tracker, there's, or just a big woods hunter in general.
Right.
You get those bad days. You just kind of get in a bad rut. And, sometimes they come home and she's like, babe, you're going to get one, And it's not even necessarily about getting one. It's just about, for me, the conditions. It's like I get frustrated when it's crunchy, bare ground. It's been 75 degrees every day. I tell her sometimes I feel like it's Groundhog Day. But to your point, you got to go.
You have to go.
Yeah. You got to go.
You have to go. The year before that, same day, November 7th, me and Luke, we killed a nice 9-pointer, in the same general area. It was fairly warm that day, too, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. We just sat down at the top of the ridge to eat a sandwich. We were just shooting the breeze and talking about all the troubles of the world, and I thought I'd see Luke's eyes light up. I heard a deer running, and I see him perk up. I said, yeah, that's a deer. And he was running a doe around top of the hill, so we both stood up. And there was one small spot through the softwood trees that we could see. It might have been, again, 50, 60, maybe 70 yards. And I held the gun up there for what seemed like forever. And I could hear him coming. And then they were running around and around and around. And I just relaxed out of the gun for a second. And the doe goes screaming through the hole. And I got the gun shouldered again. And just enough time to see the buck run through. And I touched the trigger. And he was gone. And I said, wow. I turned around, Luke. I said, there ain't no way in hell I hit that deer. And he says, oh, yeah, you hit him. He says, I watched a mule kick when you shot. I said, Luke, I said, that buck was cooking. I said, no way. I said, yeah, you hit him. So we take a walk over, and the immediate area where I'd shot, of course, a lot of times with a muzzleloader, they don't bleed real good right off. And we're looking around. There was no blood. I said, now, I told you, Luke, I wasn't real confident in the shot. He's like, I'm telling you, Garrett, the buck mule kicked when you shot. You hit him. So we walked down the trail probably, 30 yards from where I shot, and here comes the blood. And I said, oh, you were right.
Because we did.
I guess we did, right? So we got going on him a little bit, and the buck jumped up, kind of tumbled down over the bank. Said no, and he hadn't gone 100 yards and laid right down. I said, I knew he was hurt. So I said, well, let's just sit here on this log and finish eating our lunch and give it an hour or two, and we'll go get him. And we did. We gave it about an hour, and we went down. He was stone dead. So
long hour.
It was a long hour, yeah, and that was a long drag too. That one took longer than an hour. I think that one took us 7.5, almost 8 hours to get out of the woods.
Oh, wow. Those are the fun ones, though.
And it was
hot.
It was warm. We had to go through a bad blow-down mess, and it was just, but it's all worth it. That's my favorite part, is dragging them out.
Sounds like you got to hunt with your buddy a little bit more.
I do.
He's watched you shoot 2 deer 2 years in a row, but it sounds like
yeah, he does. And like I said, he's a hell of a good guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I want everybody to know that.
For sure.
So you killed 160-incher last year. What's your heaviest buck you've ever shot?
239.6, and I shot that deer in Vermont, 2010, November 17th. We did not have any snow. That deer came out with a doe that I was watching in a cut. Again, I think I watched the deer for half an hour in and out of the cedars with the doe, back and forth, and he never stood still long enough for me to get a good shot. And I said, no, just be patient. Just trying to tell myself, be patient. And so I watched him in and out of the cedars with his doe, back and forth, and it was a couple times I was pretty close to squeezing the trigger, but something told me not to. And I said, no, just wait him out. And that's one thing I've learned over the years is, if I'd have been a little more patient from the start, I think patience kills more deer than a lot, So just told myself to be patient. Eventually, they started, squirming their way up the edge of that cut. The doe went down to an old brook bed, probably 40 yards in front of me, and she crested the hill and walked by me at 25 yards. And when he come up out of that brook bed at 30 yards, I let him have it. That was it.
That's awesome.
Wow.
What do you have for horns?
He was just your basic 100-inch 8-pointer.
Yeah.
But he was big, long, thick. Actually, another friend of mine, it was close to another friend of mine's house. He had seen the deer quite a bit earlier that fall under some apple trees by his place, so he knew there was a pretty good buck around. Just right place, right time.
I mean, that's a giant for Vermont. I mean, giant anywhere.
Oh, God.
Yep.
But for Vermont, that's a real big one. Was it northern Vermont or?
Oh, yeah, northern Vermont.
Yeah.
Yep, Sutton.
Yeah. Nice.
Wow.
Not far. I don't know if you're familiar with the wind project, the Sheffield wind towers.
Oh yeah, sure.
So it'd be, the east side of the Sheffield.
Yeah.
A mile or two. It's not super far.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you got both ends of the spectrum there with a big almost 240 and then 160-incher.
Yeah.
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 So what are you going to shoot this year?
Well, honestly, my biggest goal is to shoot a Pope and Young deer in New Hampshire with my bow.
Yeah.
That's what I want to do. Obviously any good buck that comes along, I'll probably take him. But my biggest goal is to shoot a Pope and Young deer with my bow. Yep.
Have you shot many deer over there with a bow, or?
I have not.
No?
No. And I haven't had the time to dedicate to it. I'm fortunate enough to take all of November and portion of December off. So, September, October, I'm usually right at it, trying to save some money to not work for a month and a half.
Finish up the jobs for the year. And
Yep.
Yep.
For sure.
I'm glad you brought that up because a lot of people, when you do these things, when you do Northwoods Whitetails podcast and you have a YouTube channel, people, I feel like, they're like, how do you guys do it? Well, one thing I want everybody that's listening to understand is that if you're hunting only on weekends and you shoot a deer, you're doing a very, very good job.
Absolutely.
And remember, it's not about the size of the animal. It's about the hunt. I know we talk about the big ones on here, right? Because everybody wants to shoot a big deer, myself included.
Right.
But I think it's very important for the listeners to understand that if you're out there and you're having fun, and as Joey always says, if it makes your heart beat, that's what it's all about.
Right.
And the Garrett Hendersons of the world dedicate their time. They alter their life schedule to take a month and a half off to hunt.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's what it takes.
Yes.
That's what it takes. That and a whole lot of luck.
And to still get excited after you shoot the deer.
Oh, yeah.
That means something right there.
Yeah, I mean, excited is an understatement. Yeah. It really is.
No, and I love hearing that. I love hearing the, we were talking to Eric Bowick earlier from the 80K Cowboys, and he was telling a story about his son shooting a nice buck and the emotion.
Right.
And, for the people that watch this stuff that aren't in it, it's that emotion and that connection that you have with the people that you're with.
Yep.
Like the bond that you and Luke have now.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you're never going to beat that.
Right.
Never
I just, my grandfather passed away in 2018, and he didn't shoot many deer. He shot a few, and he shot a couple real nice ones, but not many. And I have one of the 11-point rack that he shot in 1955. And I remember when I was a young kid, I spent a lot of time at my grandparents' house, and I'd stare at that rack, and when they moved, they had built a new house, and my grandmother said, "Well, that's not hanging in the living room. Put that out in the garage." So I go out to the garage, and I was talking to my grandfather. He's like, "Well, she won't let me keep it in the house anymore. You might as well just take it with you." All right, cool. So I took that, and I weren't very old. I might have been first, second grade, and that rack hung in my bedroom through my childhood, and I'd lay it there at night and just stare at that thing like, man, I don't know what this hunting thing's all about, but I want to do that. I want to do that. And so a year after he passed, I took the rack, and I had a good buddy, Jordan Poutry, get me a cape, and I had the buck mounted. And
oh, good for you.
But that was the first time I'd carried my grandfather's pocket knife when I was hunting, when I shot that 162.
No kidding.
Yep.
Wow.
Well, I bet you it's going the.
Oh yeah, it'll be in my it'll be in my pocket.
That's awesome.
But no, that's
that was the trigger point right there.
It was the trigger point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can remember when I was a kid, the thing that used to, and this is going to sound silly, but what used to always get me is the bullets.
Yep.
My dad would be getting ready to go hunting, and he used to wear one of those those belts, and all the bullets went in. Yeah. And I'd take them out, and I'd just sit there and play with them, and just could not wait. So my dad made me earn being able to go to camp. So they went to northern New Hampshire, Pittsburgh area, almost every year. And it was a tradition. It wasn't. I mean, they shot some good bucks. They big woods hunt, but they didn't do a ton of tracking. I call my dad an opportunistic tracker. If the track's there, he's going to track it. He shot bucks tracking. But yeah, it was always those bullets. I would just sit there and play with them and get me all pumped up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
no, it's
well, this has been great. Thanks for
thanks for having me. I really appreciate it, and I wish Luke would have been so bashful and hopped on here.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we'll do it again. Maybe we'll get him on. Maybe next year after you shoot that Pope and Young.
Well,
that's right.
Hopefully it's his turn this year to get a good one. He puts his time in. So
sounds like a pretty selfless friend. That's awesome.
A very selfless friend, for sure.
Definitely appreciate you coming on, and look forward to your Facebook posts.
Absolutely, you too.
Enjoy the show.
I really enjoy the stuff you guys are putting out, and a lot of us do.
It's fun,
it's fun.
We're giving people a platform for a voice. I mean, it's fun listening to the stories, and it's a great opportunity to give everybody else the opportunity to listen to your story. So again, thanks for coming on. Thanks for sharing it.
No, I appreciate it very much.
Good.
It was good to see you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to need it.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
So you guys had a pretty good year last year, huh?
Yeah, we did have a pretty good year. I would consider it my best year just because I missed a lot of deer, but to see that many mature bucks is anytime you're in the woods and you're seeing mature bucks, it's a good year.
You're doing something right.
Yeah, you're doing something right. Yeah, exactly. So, I shot a good buck opening day of rifle season in New Hampshire. I shot 2 does in Vermont, one with a bow, one with a muzzleloader early season. Trying to fill the freezer so that I could be a little bit more picky. And then I smashed Maine, missed 3 up there with my rifle, and then went to Massachusetts and tracked a couple with no horns. But other than that, I consider it a pretty stellar year.
You got into some bucks by the sounds then.
Oh yeah. Even bow season in New Hampshire, I got into two good ones, but unfortunately missed both. But still, I consider that a wicked year for New Hampshire and Maine and Vermont. So
you also saw a big one during archery season too, didn't you?
Yeah, that's one of the ones I missed. That was a giant. That one stings a little bit to this day.
Yeah.
That's one of those ones where you just think about, you're laying in bed in the middle of the night on X, just like sleeping. Where is he sleeping right now?
Yep.
You know what I mean? Or is he even still alive? Because he's age class wise, he's got soda cans, so he's
an old buck.
Yeah, he's an old buck. You can see it in his face and stuff too, and it takes a long time to get an 8-pointer up in the 140s, low 150s. So
that's a big deer.
Yeah, it's a big deer. So yeah, and Johnny had a stellar year too.
Yeah, I wish it was definitely a big learning year for me, and I really started making a lot of things, a lot of connections and stuff, and but I missed a few bucks, and but I got my best buck that I've shot rack wise for sure. And
was that a bow buck?
Yeah, that was a bow buck.
Okay, I think I saw that.
Yeah. So I shot a small buck like the 4th day of archery season in New Hampshire, and I had passed up like a pile of those, a few small bucks, and I really wanted this one 6-pointer that I ended up killing, but it just all this pressure of seeing everyone shooting deer and stuff, and I wanted to get some practice in for Wisconsin, just like my archery equipment was on and stuff. So I shot that buck, and then as I'm dragging that smaller buck out, I saw the 6-pointer end up killing. Me, a buddy, and his girlfriend were like crashing down through the woods, and we throw the buck down onto like a log road, and then we jump down, and he's bedded like 60 yards away on the log road looking back at us. And then he stands up, and he never like tore off or anything, just slowly walked off and stuff. But at that point, when I saw him in person, I knew I really, really wanted him.
No, that was the buck you shot?
Yeah, that was the buck I ended up shooting. Yeah.
Now, how far from there did you kill that buck?
So, not far. I mean, I knew he was hanging in there pretty tight. And I had a couple cameras in there, but it wasn't until after the season when I checked the camera or after I shot him that I checked that camera. He was on it like within a month, like during the season, September 15th to October 16th when I shot him. I believe he was on that camera 20 different days. Like he was living right there. And I knew he was in there just by like checking a few of the knobs around that I was seeing buck sign and stuff. And but based by the one camera I was checking when I was going in there, that was just pretty like, low intrusion camera check. He was really like the only buck I was getting on camera. So, I mean, I knew he was kind of like the king.
Yeah, and you called him in too.
Yeah, so the story was really cool. I sat Saturday night, the 15th of October, and I sat there really, really late. Like I waited until like 8:30, 9 o'clock, and I got down and I had a drag rag and a bunch of doe urine and stuff, and there was 4 knobs I thought he was bedding on, and I was hoping that by that point he'd kind of worked off into the ag and stuff, and or up on the ridge with the acorns and stuff. So I drag ragged 4 different knobs that I was figuring to be bedded on. I'd bring it right back down to the saddle where I ended up shooting them. And then the next morning, I drag ragged my whole access into where that stand was at the saddle, and every half an hour from daylight to when I shot him, I was doe bleeding, just a couple of doe bleeds. And actually, it was the coolest thing ever. The first and only time I've ever heard a buck roar, but I heard like this loud, like it like scared me. It was just like, roar. And I looked, and there he was standing there like 200 yards through the woods. Just the sun was hitting him perfect. It was just the most beautiful thing ever.
No kidding.
Yeah, and I was shaking so bad I couldn't grab my grunt tube fast enough, and I just turned my head and I grunted 3 times, and it was like watching a big buck hunter video game. Like he just came running through the woods, twisting through the woods and stuff. Jumped over a blowdown, and one of the knobs, whatever, that saddle I was sitting on, he was headed right for that because that's where my thermals were sucking up, and he like came at the base of my tree. I thought he was gonna come to the base of my tree, then turned, headed up the hill towards that knob to get my wind. And the second he got it, it was like his couple head bobs, and then like he had me. His ass flipped around, and he was facing me. And so he had me pinned, and the whole time as he's coming in, I'm just like this is sweet, but I'm like, he's not yours yet. He's not yours yet. And I had my bow drawn back, or like I had my string to my face, and he had me pinned, and I just pushed my bow straight away. And the second my bow came to full draw, I just like everything was perfect. My anchor points, everything was like it was meant to be, and my housing was just poof, right on him. And I figured 30, pulled the trigger, and it went right in the white line. And he was uphill from me, so I smoked him right in the heart.
Yep.
And then the exit was actually like center mass up.
Oh,
but,
perfect.
But he took off, and I just never heard him stop running. Like it just faded out. So I'm like, I think I just smashed him, but like it sounded like he went away.
Yeah.
So I'm like freaking out. I'm calling people, saying I don't know what to do.
That's like the worst.
Yeah, right.
I hate
you
that
always
feeling.
Yeah.
Even if you smoke one, you just always have that doubt.
Yep.
And I called a buddy. He's like, well, he goes, did you hit him or did you miss him? And I'm like, I don't know. He's like, well, I'm not coming to help you look for him until you send me a picture of a bloody arrow. So I'm like, all right. So I get down, and I go up to where he's standing, and I stood there for like 5 minutes just trying to I'm like, he was definitely standing here. He was just running tracks, and I didn't see any blood right away. But then I looked, and my arrow, I was like 5 feet from my arrow, and it was jammed in a hemlock. And there was half an hour, 40 minutes later, and there's blood still dripping off the nock. And I'm like, I smashed him. So I took his track, and I probably went like 350, 400 yards. Just, like waiting for him to show up and stuff. I was taking the track, and I kept going, and he was bleeding good, but I was just getting so worried, and he kept calling me like, I'm here. So I turned around, went and got him, and we went back, and he's like, where was last blood? And I'm like, well, last blood was over here somewhere. And he's like, all right, have your bow ready. And he goes, I'll take the track, just have your bow ready just in case he's still alive or something. And we took like 2 steps. I just looked back. I'm like, he's right there. And if I took the track another 10 yards, I probably would have seen him. I just went over the next knob. He was laid right there.
So he didn't go too far then?
No.
Well, yeah. He went 450 yards on a hard shot. Yeah.
No kidding.
So
they're tough animals.
Yeah,
but
especially that time of year.
Yeah. So that was October 16th. It was a very brave thing for me to do, like drag rag, grunt, and use so much vocalization and stuff because I feel like it was pretty early, but
it worked.
But I was going to Wisconsin the next weekend, so that was my last my Hail Mary at trying to shoot him, and that was Sunday, so it was my last hunt. I had to kill him, so it worked out perfect. And,
now, is that your first time doing a scent drag?
Yeah. So when I went out to Ohio a couple years before, I went out with some people, and there was a kid that I went with that did it. And it worked perfect for him.
And what did you put on that? Doe and heat?
Yep. And
do you think that buck you shot followed that scent trail?
I think so. Yeah, he was. Yeah, so I dragged it my axis. I go right up the center of the swamp, and then I cut in. I go in about a mile, and then I cut in, whatever that was, a few hundred yards off, and he was down in that swamp. The sun was hitting that swamp perfectly, and he came right in from there.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was sweet. He had his mouth, his tongue was hanging out of his mouth. His ears were coned forward, he was looking, and his tail was wagging like a dog.
Yeah,
and it was
he was on it.
And he roared and stuff. He was definitely on it.
Yeah,
and,
that's awesome.
Yeah,
so
that's exactly last year. Not the same scenario opening day, but pretty much I scent dragged up from my axis, and I don't know if that's what made him. That's not what made them come in, but I think it might have helped when that doe finally got there. Mm-hmm. That she smelt me. But she also smelled a hot doe, and I think that helped. But
kinda
also,
keep her there for a few minutes.
And that was the first time I ever heard a roar, was that buck. So it's kind of cool that the stories are pretty similar.
Yep.
And that was early in the year too. That was first day of rifles in New Hampshire. So not. It's still they're starting to rut, but it's not as early as obviously October.
Yeah. But it seems like those bucks mid-October time they're ready for it.
Yeah, they're ready for it. So if they know there's one in the area, they're definitely on it.
Yeah, they're looking.
And especially younger, especially that middle age or younger class bucks too. They're definitely. The bigger bucks are. Don't get me wrong. They're definitely moving that time of year. But those young bucks. bow season. They're just they're everywhere.
They're antsy.
They're antsy. Yeah.
They're moving.
They're moving a lot, doing a lot of chasing.
Now you guys hunt a lot of big woods, don't you?
Yeah. Me primarily, I grew up hunting smaller patches of woods. I grew up in St. Johnsbury, Vermont. And I hunt a lot of waterford and small patches, and there's big deer shot everywhere. But that curiosity, I grew up watching people like Jeff Doyle, all these guys, and I mean, my eyes are just like glued to the TV and listening to the Benoits. And I wanted it so bad. And then my mom married a guy that lives right dead in the White Mountains. And I moved there, and I hunted there a little bit when I was like 14 and 15. But, I was just a little kid, 200-300 yards in the woods. So I was, big woods hunter. Yeah. And then I turned 16. I had my license, and I said, I'm going to track my first buck this year. And I did. And I've been hooked ever since. And it was a 4-point. I was on the track of looking back now, I'm like, oh, what did you do, But that buck, I mean, I tracked him, or tracked the big one, jumped a spike horn in that 4-pointer, knew they were bucks, got on their tracks, gave them 30 minutes, went up, crossed the swamp, hardwood ridge. I stopped, called with my mouth, and I had them both come right to me.
That's awesome.
So, like, for a kid, like 16 years old, I mean, I was like...
You're fired right up,
I was fired right up.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I was just hooked. And then the next year I was, 17, and I told myself, I said, I will not shoot a young buck. Mm-hmm. It's going to be a big buck. And I'm going to do it the same way I want to track. And I even had some small buck tracks, and I would take the day off of school. Thankfully, I love my dad. He's a pretty good guy, and I wouldn't tell my mom, but my dad, he'd let me, he'd let me take the day off if I was on a big buck. And I had a couple cross the road. On the way to school, I was waking up and doing road work, and I found a couple mediocres, but one morning I found the one, and I got on that buck, and that buck, 5 miles later, and I ended up shooting him. I jumped him out of his bed, got him to stop, and I shot him, and it was quite a bit of a chase. My first shot was mediocre. It was low in the armpit, so he was bleeding and he felt sick, but it wasn't like going to kill him. Mm-hmm. Or it was going to kill him, but not.
But you had snow, right?
Yeah, and I had snow, and I put 3 more into him. I mean, they're just such tough animals, and that sounds like it's, it sounds like it's a horrible thing to do, but it was the quickest way to put him down. Yeah. I don't care how you hunt. Eventually, you're going to make a mediocre shot. It's going to happen.
Doesn't matter who
But
you
the nice thing is the style I do, I run a deer down hard, and I do it quickly. If I have blood on the snow, I know everyone's different. Some people give them time. If there's a bullet in a deer, I'm full speed ahead.
Right. You've got a gun in your hand.
Yeah, if I have a gun in the hand. Now, bow's different, but if I have a gun in the hand, that deer's getting ran down. And but yeah, that deer really hooked me. Once I felt that 130 inches of rack, I was just like...
Hard to go back after that.
Oh, yeah, I haven't gone back. It's just like, you know what I mean? It's and that sounds like a trophy hunter, and I would consider myself a trophy hunter in the fact that I know what I want, and I love watching deer get old. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I love watching them get old, and, there's a level of respect to them, too. And, if I shot the first 4-pointer that just came to me, then it... I'm just holding myself to a different standard.
You wouldn't have all these experiences you have now.
Yeah, exactly.
Letting these younger bucks go now.
Yeah, I'm not trigger happy.
Yeah, exactly.
And if I let a big one go, I got to grin ear to ear.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Knowing you could have killed them.
Let him go, but, miss him or whatever. I love it.
Yeah.
I just love the chase.
Just as good as killing one.
It's just as good. Like Massachusetts, when I tracked those 2 bucks and no headgear, I took a couple of videos. I don't think I posted them or anything, but, my face hurt. I was smiling so hard. I caught 2 mature bucks in their bed, and one of them I jumped 9 times.
Yeah, tell those stories. Those are pretty good ones.
Yeah. So
this is your first year in Massachusetts,
First year
correct?
in Mass.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I went down, hunted northwest Massachusetts, big woods. Well, big for Massachusetts. Found the biggest patch I could, and I went in there and hunted a couple days, and then on the 3rd day, I was tracking a big one. He was big for down there, and I was tracking him. Jumped him 4 times that day, or 5 times that day. Ran him hard. Never saw him. I nicknamed him Ghost because that's rare for me to at least not catch. I didn't even catch a tail. Like, I was coming to running tracks out of beds. That's it. And that was bothering me. I mean, like, normally I can at least see them. I'm
especially
like,
late season.
Yeah, late season. Yeah. I mean, he was smart. This deer was not stupid. And so I tracked him, and now I'm going, and my brother was with me. And we're starting to get on the other side of this big patch, and it's getting late. And I looked at him, and I said, we don't have service in here, but I said, you drive around and you park where that is on my map. I said, and I'll be there at dark, and I'm going to run this deer till dark. And I ran him to dark, and I knew he was going to be pretty much bedded. So the next morning I went in, on the way out that night. I'm on my way out, and it was like an hour left to dark, and maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours. And I'm starting heading, and I I caught smoking fresh, but not just smoking fresh. I mean, giant. Like, I'd take this track in Maine. It's big. And I get on it, and he was meandering and feeding instantly. And I'm like, all right, just slow down, take your time. So I did, and not even 100 yards later, I caught him right in his bed, and I thought I had him. Like, I'm like, you are so done. And I pull up, and just 2 big, pretty brown patches.
Oh, man.
And I'm like, I mean, you could just tell, too. Like, I'm looking at this deer in his bed. He's long. He's still thick. He's got a huge, just a chunk of a head, big Roman nose. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. But I was happy.
Yeah.
So I was on the way out, and it cost me, like 250 yards of walking. I'm like, that's awesome. Like, cherry on top.
And the confidence booster.
Confidence booster
exactly.
for tomorrow, too. And so then I went in the next day, went straight to those tracks. Sure enough, that deer didn't bed 200 yards from where I left him. And I came in from the back side. It was a little bit quicker access on the other side because we had gone to the other side and jumped him out of that bed, never saw him. I'm like, come on. I'm like, I give you all night, and you still are you're quick.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I nicknamed him Ghost.
Knows the game.
Yeah, he knows the game very well. And 4 jumps later, he was starting to meander, and I just hit the brakes. And I soft-footed it hard, and that's rare for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I caught him behind a blowdown, bedded. Same thing. I see him first, I pull up, and then he kind of like sees me pull my gun up and then stands up. And, just stands right up out of the brush pile, and I could smoke him right there and no headgear, too.
Dang.
And I'm like, you know what, though? I took a video. I have video of both of them in my scope, and to be honest with you, that makes me feel like it's almost like you got them, like you got the experience of, I guess, so-and-so killing him, but you didn't have to take a life.
Yep, exactly.
So I felt like I was accomplished. Like, I felt accomplished at that moment.
If he hadn't shit at you, would have had a nice buck. Both of those
times. And like, yeah, I just felt it just felt really good. It felt really good.
So how many years have you been tracking?
Since I was 16.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how
16.
old are you now?
I'm 21.
Yep.
Yeah. I grew up. My dad hunted big woods, but he had 2. I'm a twin, so he had 2 little cubs trying to keep up with him in the woods. So we did a lot of sitting, small woods, like I said, St. John's Bay area, and there's a lot of deer over there, but you're not getting the caliber of the deer we get in New Hampshire and in Maine in these big woods. Now it's hard to kill these deer in these big woods, but now that I'm older, my dad's not dragging me, carrying my pack.
Yep.
I'm tired. There's none of that anymore. If anything, I'm probably carrying him up the hill now.
Yeah.
So yeah. But So I've been tracking since I was 16, and I'm just addicted.
And that's your favorite way to hunt.
That is my favorite way to hunt. I mean, I've killed mature deer both ways, tracking and sitting. Last year's buck in New Hampshire was sitting just because it was no snow, and I believe in having my dad taught me a lot about sitting, and I'm very thankful for that because, the more arrows you have in your quiver for different things, the more successful you're going to be. Because muzzleloader season in New Hampshire, we haven't had snow in the last 3 years?
Yeah,
probably 3 years.
It's never a guarantee.
Yeah, snow is never a guarantee. So what I did, though, where I killed that buck last year, tracking is what showed me that spot.
Yep.
I had tracked 4 or 5 different mature bucks, and they went through the same saddle.
That's a great way to learn new country.
It is an amazing way. And they all went up, hit that saddle, and either went left to right to the green knobs. And, I mean, we're talking rabbit jail. And that's where they were bedding. So what I did last year was I went in there, muzzleloader season. It was like the third, or no, it was 2 days before rifle or whatever, right? Or it might have been the last day of muzzleloader season, anyways. I made a mock scrape, I peed in it, and on his scrape line, and I went in opening day of rifle, and that buck and a doe came out, and it's just that if I hadn't tracked deer through that exact spot, and it's a small saddle. It's not a big saddle. I mean, I can see. It's a 200-yard saddle, and tracking showed me that spot, and it's the same thing with Maine. I found spot where you walk in and you're like, is this even Maine? There's so many deer in here. But I think a lot of people on dry ground, I would have never went in there, but those tracks brought me in there, and next thing you know, you're in a barnyard of deer, and tracking will show you those spots.
And each year, those are probably good spots to hang out, whether it's bare ground or snow.
Yeah, in Maine, it's hard to kill a big buck without snow on the ground. It's a hard feat. And the last couple of years, we've been pretty successful killing bucks on dry ground because of what we do when we track. They'll bring us into these little pockets and stuff. And I'm actually really excited because last year between me and my brother, we found 2 different swamps that, I mean, it is so impressive. And you just go in there and you're just seeing, like, there's just deer everywhere. Mm-hmm. And for northern Maine where we hunt, that is just rare. I mean, it's taken us a long time to find those. And we ended up getting 1 buck out of there last year in the swamp I found. And the next day after, it was my buddy. We double teamed him. He shot that buck. And the next day I went in the same swamp, tracked a buck, and I had him coming right at me. And there's just like, it's like a 25-yard shot swamp. And all I could see was just racking his feet. And I couldn't get in there. Yeah. I could never get a shot. But I'm telling you, he was a beauty. And that one I never shot at, so I can't count that as a miss. But that's one of those mature bucks I saw that just make you want to come back for more. It just makes you want to go dive in that swamp right now.
I'm sure you're fired up the next day to get back out there.
Oh, yeah. And it is a confidence booster. Every buck you see, when I first started, every buck I messed up on it hurt. And I would be butthurt about it. And then the older I've gotten and the more I've seen, it's like, no, I'm doing something. Yeah. You know, I'll tell you now, if you're seeing big bucks, even if it's 1 a year, you're doing something.
Even if you're not getting shots off.
No, even if you're not even getting shots off, you're doing something.
You're putting yourself in the right spots to see those deer.
And eventually, 2 points connect, and it works.
Yep, exactly.
So, yeah.
So you like to hunt big woods. What do you look for in a new area when you're going to scout? Do you go in with the rifle in hand, or do you scout preseason? Do you scout in the winter?
Normally, I don't scout much, but the last 2 years I've been doing some scouting. Okay. And mostly for bow. I've been really trying to kill a big buck with my bow. Last year I came close. This year we'll see if it even happens. But what I'm looking for, to be honest with you, is a nice green top. Yep. I love green tops.
So you like to hunt high?
I like to hunt high. Mm-hmm. It's my curiosity that brings me up there. Yep. I know there's deer going down in the swamps, but man, my curiosity is like, you know what, I'm going up top there. You know, you just picture something like 160-inch, like, gnarly deer that lives up there in a hole. Oh, yeah. And you're hoping you, like, trip, fall in the hole, and shoot him, you know? Yeah. Like, that's what you just picture.
The mystique of knowing what's up there.
Yeah, it is. Be up there. And same thing with the big swamp. You know, you get the same, like, feeling of, like, I wonder what's lurking in here. But I do like Laney, I've heard Laney Benoit say this. You know, a big hardwood ridge with no swamp at the bottom, don't waste your time. Yep. And I'm not saying a buck won't cruise through there, but he's right about that. You know, they like that green.
You got to have a good mix of everything.
You want a good mix. And thankfully in the White Mountains, we have a lot of those decent food down low, decent areas, river bottoms with good food, and then you've got nice green tops. And they can, and I've shot deer down low, down by the river bottoms, but I really like those tops. Yeah. I just do.
Just your style.
Just my style. And cuts, I do like cuts. I don't really focus on them too much, to be honest with you. I really try to focus on where those deer are hitting, like, middle of the day. Mm-hmm. Like, where's this buck? I try to get in the mind of a mature buck of, like, where would I feel most comfortable that I'm not going to get touched?
Yeah, in daylight.
Yep. Because there's no such thing as a nocturnal deer. They're alive, moving daylight somewhere. Now, they might be sleeping somewhere, but hopefully you can find that. And I have found that the tops, it's usually pretty good up there.
And you were saying you don't run many cameras either, so you're...
No, I don't. Yeah. I've ran cameras. You know, a lot of the bucks, the first big buck I killed, I had him on camera, but it wasn't in my camera. It was my grandfather's camera. Sure. And I would chuck it. You know, he did it for fun, and he's not really a big deer hunter, but he did it for fun. And I love looking at pictures, don't get me wrong. And I'll put cameras out. Like this year, we've put some cameras out. And I don't know. I just have always loved I don't know. I never had success, and it's never helped me kill a big deer. Yeah. So I just never have used it. Now that I'm bow hunting, it's kind of nice to, you know, trying to bow hunt a big buck. It's kind of nice to know, okay, am I in the area of a bow buck that I want? Because they don't move a lot this time of year. Right. So if you find one, it's nice to know, like, I mean, you can tell by tracks on the ground too, but, you know, it's nice to run cameras, and I just love seeing pictures of big deer.
Especially if you're going to be sitting there, you kind of like to have a little bit of confidence.
Confidence and reassurance, exactly. Yeah. And when I was young, I probably got burnt out from cameras because when I was young, I think I ruined myself a couple times, like relying on them, or I'd go in and I'd check them, and they're just nighttime pictures, and I'd be like, I can't believe there's no daylight pictures. Well, guess what? Your camera's only picking up 15 feet in the woods. And in November, they're not taking the same trail every single day, most likely. So
that's it. A lot of guys rely too much on the cameras, where the deer could be walking the trail right behind the camera, or right off to the side of it, or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm a big instinctual person. Like, I believe that you just kind of, like, go with your gut. Like, take it easy, just go with your gut. And, you know, and And deer, annually different deer, they're going to do similar things. Now, there's going to be certain deer have certain patterns, but, if you figure out like saddles, pinch points, I mean, those are geological features. I'm a big geological feature guy. Those are always going to produce. They have to.
So when you say that, you're talking like saddles ridges that dump down and meet
fingers.
one spot,
like I like fingers, stuff like that. But I really love saddles and I love pinch points. And the reason why is because a deer can't go up an 80-foot sheer ledge. I mean, I've tracked some billy goats before, but they're not going straight up a wall.
Right.
And if you have one small saddle they have to go through, when they're rut and especially when they're zombie walking, if you set that for a week straight, you're eventually going to probably lay eyes on a mature buck.
And oftentimes you don't see sign in those types of spots.
No, you
from
don't.
what I've gathered.
No, you don't. And I've actually told a lot of people this, and they think I'm crazy when I say this, but I say sometimes stay away from the sign.
Yeah.
And I've killed 2 big bucks in spots that there's actually not a ton of sign.
Mm-hmm.
Now one of the bucks I killed last year, he was on there's really no sign except in that one saddle. But if you go to where they're bedding, there's no rubs. There's no rubs. I mean, every once in a while you'll find a rub here and there.
But not like a feeding area that's just tore up.
No,
everybody
you're not.
hunts.
Yeah, down low.
Yeah.
Oh my word! I mean, it's pounded.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pounded. I mean, you're talking huge signpost. I mean, popple trees that are just shredded, scrape lines, and I found that a lot of those deer, like tracking them, same thing. They lay a ton of sign down low. They're at night, like 3 and 4 in the morning. They're just pounding down low, and then they go up the mountain. They do a little feeding, and then they're at the top sleeping.
And the sign kind of fizzles out as they're going up.
The sign fizzles.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's part of the reason why I like that saddle is because not every saddle has one trail with a scrape line going right through it.
Yeah.
Like when I found that, I'm like, I probably should pay attention to it. And it worked last year. And if you find certain spots like that annually, I believe that I could hunt that probably the rest of my life and it's probably going to produce for me.
Right.
Not every time I sit it, obviously.
But you put enough time in there, sooner or later you're going to have a nice buck pass through that spot.
Yeah, exactly. Not even just that spot. I mean, that entire ridge is just good. And it's every ridge in New Hampshire and Vermont has at least one buck you probably want to shoot on it. You just got to find them. They're hard to find. They're good at what they do.
Yeah, they get so much country they could be in.
They do. Yeah. And there's a lot of food too. And that's kind of separated. You know what I mean? Like they're not limited to one apple orchard. They're not limited to one cut or anything like that. I mean, sometimes in the White Mountains, some spots aren't cut and then some are. So that kind of helps draw a lot of deer. Like I just found a spot and I almost said the spot. Good thing I didn't know peeping on that one. But, there's a ton of sign right behind that 2-year-old cut. Not like old sign, like old trails. I mean, like trails that were just made because of that fresh cut.
Yeah.
And in that specific area, there's not a lot of food, except the tops and the swamps. So when they put that cut in, and there hasn't been a cut in that area for, I think the cut that's probably 9-10 years old, and they just went, I think 9 or 10 years old, and they just went in and put a fresh cut. So now the deer are
it's like a food plot for
It's
them.
like a food plot. Yep. It's a natural food plot, and in that spot, Bo is definitely there's going to be some time spent
because they're probably in there this time of year.
They are. There's a ton of fresh sign in there, and this rain's actually helped with scouting too because it's raining so much, you can tell what's fresh sign and what's not. If you find a sharp track in the dirt and it rained 2 days ago, well, that's been within 2 days.
And those are great areas to find those tracks is in the logged areas.
It is because you're fresh
trails,
dirt.
skid trails, whatever.
Yeah, fresh dirt. Yeah, for sure.
So you guys like to really get after it. What's your plans for the fall?
Johnny, go for it.
Well, I mean, I got a pretty packed fall, I think. I'm really going to try from September 15th to when I leave for Wisconsin, which is going to be like the last week of October. I'm going to be there for like 2 weeks.
Nice.
In search of vengeance from last year. And I'm really going to spend that month really just trying to shoot, one good buck with my bow. And preferably like a 3.5-year-old, something nice. But whether that's Vermont, New Hampshire, I'm watching a couple, okay bucks or here and there and stuff. So, but then after that, I'm going to go to Maine. Thanksgiving week, and then got Massachusetts.
We're gonna double team a buck.
Nice.
Johnny.
Yeah.
We're gonna smash too. I can feel it right now.
Yeah.
We're
I'm
gonna
sure
do
you
it.
guys will.
I hope so.
Yeah.
It's definitely the mindset.
Yeah.
Definitely the
100%.
mindset.
Yeah. So I'm pretty new to like tracking in like big woods, to be honest. I mean, I was very fortunate. I grew up on a pretty big farm, like a 500-acre farm. shared between me, my brothers, my dad, uncle, neighbors and stuff. So it wasn't like I just had it to myself, but like from the time I could, was really interested in just getting out in the outdoors, I was always had like, that to refer to. I've probably shot, 7 or 8 bucks in Vermont, and I got to the point where, I was sick of looking at the same stuff. So it was about 2 years ago I really started, branching out, and I just loved everything I saw. Just was like, just opened up my horizon to, for so much stuff. I started going out Midwest and stuff. Last year, I was having a great year, and then the first snowstorm we had, that first Wednesday of Vermont rifle season, my boss asked me if I could come in. We had to pour some concrete. We poured concrete in the snow. I'm a plumber, but he's building a shop, so I told him, like, yeah, I can come in, but I really wanted to do some tracking. So I just went down the road a little ways. I saw a track that cut across the road. I tracked him, whatever. It wasn't a big buck, whatever, but I knew it was a buck, and I tracked him, and I ended up catching him. He was a small 4-pointer. I didn't want to shoot, and I did kind of want to shoot him just so I could like have that extra excuse of showing up late, because I knew I was going to be late. But so then I'm rushing to work, and I'm coming around the corner, and my gun was in the passenger seat of my truck, and it started to slide in the passenger seat of my truck, so I'm fiddling around with it, and I look up, and I'm heading straight off the corner.
Oh, no.
I totaled my truck. So then my entire rifle season, I was,
wrecked your season.
Yeah, wrecked my season. I was worried about, insurance and stuff, and I, like, waiting for the insurance call back, and I was fiddling around with rentals. I didn't want to, bury a rental in a snowbank, whatever, track it, So I really didn't hunt much, the rifle season stuff, but then I went to Pennsylvania. I went with like a group of people. We shot a buck like almost every day. It was a really cool trip. But I missed a giant, a really nice.
No kidding.
Yeah, really nice 10.
And that was bow season.
Late. It was the second week of rifle season in Pennsylvania.
Yep. Nice.
Yep. Second week. So it was, the places we were hunting were fairly, already pretty heavily hunted. Like they already had the first week to get pretty thinned out, but we still did some pretty good damage. And like I said, I had my opportunity on a pretty nice buck.
Yeah.
But,
yeah. What about you, Nate? What's your plans?
Well, I'm moving to Colorado. I'm moving out west, but I already bought my tickets to come back for November.
Okay.
I've had so many people say to me, you're going to hunt out there, and I'm like, I would love to kill an elk. I'd love to kill a mule deer, but I'll pass that up for 115-inch New England deer every day.
Yep.
Like, I'm hooked. So I bought my tickets already. I'm coming back for December, Massachusetts. And I'm coming back for November, like Thanksgiving area time, and wherever there's snow is where my truck's going to be.
Yep.
And
just chasing snow this season.
Chasing snow. And I started my own business this year, and that's really helped set up like my schedule for being able to do that, like be able to chase snow. And I think that I'm going to continue that path, so that way I can choose and pick my time. And I think that's going to make a huge difference. But my plan is I really honestly want to see my dad kill a big buck with his bow. That's been his dream his entire life. He's killed monsters with his rifle, but that's why I'm scouting really hard right now. Is I don't think I'm going to get too much. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to get a crazy. Like, I don't think I'm going to get really any bow season in. I'm just going to use all my time for rifle. Mm-hmm. And last year I didn't shoot a buck tracking, and that really I really want to. And so, yeah, that's kind of what my plan is. I'm coming back, and I just want to live out west for a little bit, get the feel, I'm young. I don't have kids. I don't have responsibilities, and everyone in my life, that's all that tells me to do it now. So
you're going out there just for something new?
Yeah, I'm going to go out. Yeah, I'm going to go out there, and I'm going to a Bible college, and but while I'm out there, I have family out there too. So my mom's originally from Cody, Wyoming, so I'm going to spend time with family out there, and I'll probably do some hunting out there, but like I said, I already have my plane tickets. Yeah. I'm addicted to New England hunting.
It's hard to leave.
It is hard to leave. It's not better hunting than out there.
No,
it's way
not.
better.
Yeah.
I mean, we were driving with my uncle. I remember we were out there when I was a kid, and there's like a 140-inch whitetail sitting on the side of the road, and he didn't even look over at it. And I'm like, dude, that's a giant whitetail. And he goes, those are trash deer. Like they're muleys and elks. That's what they want.
Right.
And he's like, those are trash deer. And I'm like, a trash deer? I'm
You
like,
know you're
I'm
not in New
coming out
Hampshire
here.
anymore.
No, I know. They're all like, there's like, I can't remember, it was a soybean field or something. We were driving by, and like deer just pick like 130s, 140s, and 120s are just all picking their heads up. I'm like,
You're just drooling.
oh, I'm just drooling. I'm fogging the window.
Yeah.
And he's like, dude, those aren't mule deer. Stop. I'm like, oh, jeez, whatever. But yeah, so I'm sure I'll do some hunting out there.
Be cool just to experience something new out there.
It is, yeah, and I've heard people tracking deer out there,
Yeah.
and they say it's really cool because it's completely different scenery than around here. So I definitely am interested, and I know some guys that live out there that are actually from Vermont that moved out there as well, and they've done hunting. So it's not. I'm gonna go with someone anyways, whether I buy my tags. I just want the experience.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm excited to
That'll
come
be
back
sweet.
though. I'm definitely excited to come back. All that cooped up energy, I'm just gonna be
Yeah,
ripping.
you'll be running around.
Oh, I'm gonna be running right over him. I'm just gonna run right over him and
You'll be
just
running right by
I'm gonna
him.
be like yeah, exactly. That's what I meant. I'm gonna be like a beagle when the rabbit takes a 90 and he just keeps running.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Oh yeah, and I think my lungs. I've heard that your lungs get expanded. So
That's true. It'd
my
be a
breathing
higher
should
elevation out
breathing
there.
should be pretty good when I
Yeah.
get back because I've ran myself out of breath a couple times.